Okay, mate. So, like, one of the things that you said you wanted to see from Directive 8020 and future Supermassive games going forward, right, is just kind of more significant and an improved prologue. Am I right?
Yeah, it is. So, like, you know how it goes with like the other prologues. I mean, we did get it with Little Hope, where like Taylor, she would go through to the main game, or like the depending on how she died, House of Ashes. Whether it's what's his face, Balathu or Suran. I can't remember the name.
Correct.
That's it. Yeah. So like they would go through to the main body of the game, but the premise was always the same, where like the prologue characters would die. In Directive 8020, I would like to see that mixed up a little bit. So maybe it could be that character goes through to the main game. Say like take Laura from the Quarry, how like her and Max survived, and then they actually played a significant role later on, not necessarily as a villain, but like as like a spare character, like a non-playable character, just to mix up the formula a bit. Because we were literally saying, weren't we, before, how like in The Devil in Me, it's got to the point where it's so predictable now, where characters go to Holmes's hotel, they're both gonna get killed. Even then, even within that, I think it would be good to mix up the prologue, where like, if they are gonna die, then have the QTEs mean something, have the heartbeat sequences mean something, so that when you're playing the prologue, there is actually stuff on the line, as opposed to this whole tutorial thing going on, the thing that they've got going on at the minute.
I have to agree, and I do think the prologues have fallen under a pattern where we know the characters are fodder. So we don't attach ourselves to the prologue characters anymore, do we? I feel like when we first had Man and Medan, I was like, oh, Joe, I'm playing as Joe. When I stepped into The Devil in Me, I'm like, yeah, I'm playing as Jeff. I'm going to die in a minute. Like, my enthusiasm just completely dwindled, didn't it? And I feel like it's funny. I see this game, or Directive 8020, getting compared, or people want it to turn out like the Alien series. I don't know if you've watched the Alien films, but I'm a pretty big fan of them. And Aliens, the second one, had this prologue, right, where it followed this family, and then the whole film is about this army that go on board this spaceship, where the family in the prologue were, and you find the daughter of the family, Newt, still alive. And I feel like it was so cool they brought her back in the main film, and I feel like you could definitely do something where, yeah, like you say, maybe let's bring a prologue character into the game. I know, like, some of them you can't do that because they'll do it errors and errors before, where you can't necessarily have a character be alive because they would have died by old age at that point. But yeah, like, yeah, why not dare, right? Why not dream, like, mix them up a bit, have a prologue that has a more significant impact on the game. Because maybe I'm being harsh here, but I was a little underwhelmed with The Devil in Me. It was just sort of like the whole thing was just to say the cycle continues. There was a nice little dress at the end there, a bit of decor with the ring being in the case, his little trophy cabinet, but still, it didn't really cut the mustard for me.
Exactly, yeah. So, like, the bit you were saying as well about, like, space horror.
Yeah.
Alien. I mean, I have seen a bit of Alien. I think I watched maybe, like, the first 45 minutes of it. And for me, it's lauded as a classic, but for me, like, the 45 minutes like felt incredibly slow. So like maybe I like turned off at like the wrong point. I think it may have been the bit where like the alien like comes out someone's stomach, or it was like maybe leading up to that bit. But yeah, space horror is just not something I'm very familiar with. I mean, there's space horror games, and there is Mass Effect a space horror game, or am I just completely making that up? But there's definitely ones out there. But I am keen to see how they fare with this one, because it's like a subgenre of horror that I'm just not familiar with, to be honest. But
yeah, no, of course. I mean, obviously, this game is going to be very different and significant because it's set in space. We've never really seen Supermassive Games do that before, other than Rachel's premonition of House of Ashes, so you can't really count that. But I mean, one thing I want to see done differently in this one, or I feel like if they're in space, they need to give us space features. They really need to embrace the fact that we're not going to be on planet Earth. We're going to be in a spaceship. I want to see Zero G, like this Telltale Expanse game's going to have. Obviously, don't get me wrong, The Devil in Me was so good that it gave us these features. It allowed us to sprint for the first time. It let us, go up ladders, shimmy, crawl. We had a lot of stuff going for it. And maybe I'm just being absolutely greedy here, Jack, but I'm thinking a lot of that stuff probably won't translate in The Devil in Me. But I want them to embrace the space theme. I want to go out my spaceship. I want to fix the outside of my spaceship tethered to a bit of rope, let out in space. I want there to be that jeopardy where I could get cut off and just cut loose out in the open galaxy. I want to just float around in my spaceship. I think, that would be a really neat thing. Is that something you'd be interested in seeing, mate?
The whole zero-G thing, I do really hope they do. I hope it isn't just, like you say, you're wandering around a spaceship, shimmying, vaulting and stuff with like a nice picture of space outside. One thing I did think of when you was talking then, it comes back to like that survey of the Dark Pictures survey, death in exploration. Could you imagine like you're just like maybe going from one part of the ship to the next and you're actually out in space, 0G, and there's no invisible wall. Maybe if you go too far, like you actually get a character killed, like they might like pull something like that from under. So I don't know, but there is like so much that they do with like the whole space thing. So I do hope it is more than what we got in The Devil in Me. And honestly, like, touching on this whole theme of exploration as well, what I would like to see is that you can. You've obviously got, say like The Devil in Me, right? You've got the whole bit with Mark when you can climb up and down the ladder and, to get the key and so on and so forth. That's all very linear, right? What I would like to see is that you have a linear path, but maybe there's like offshoots every now and then. So like you can like wander down this random corridor. There might be a clue at the end of it. There might be another thing where you've got a shimmy or you've got a vault or whatever. There's like hidden clues that are like, not part of the main path, if you get what I mean. Just so that it builds up the world a little bit more, and just so that it's not, you don't constantly feel like it's like so linear. Maybe you could take it even further and say that there's like a quick route and a short route. So, you go one way and it like might take ages. You go another way and you might find clues, you might find this and that, and end up in the same location, but it's just different each time. To be fair, they even did it in the quarry. Like you think with Emma, you can either go along the bottom when you're on the island and then climb up the ladder, or you can walk along the top and, you know what I mean? Like, so there is stuff there. I just hope that they can bring that into Directive 8020 as well.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of these games, right, is having a chat with your mates afterwards and asking what you did, and comparing your outcomes. And I love the idea of maybe, like, I don't know, us chatting afterwards, and then I sort of say, oh, did you go to, like, the upper deck in the second chapter? And, like, did you go through, like, I don't know, door B2, I don't know. And you're like, wait, no, what? You can do that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you can. There's all these clues, and you get to, like, read this guy's email, and you just look at me like, what? I missed all of that. And, like, sometimes it's brilliant when you kind of just find that one thing that maybe your mates didn't, and it just feels a little bit rewarding that you kind of like stuck your neck out a little bit and you took a path no one else saw. So yeah, like I completely agree. Like obviously with The Devil in Me, it was nice that we had all these extra features and all these different paths to find clues. But yeah, like I definitely think they could be a lot less linear than they are. And yeah, I just think that would be a really cool thing, mate.
It's like honestly what I was saying. Like it's going back to the quarry again. Whole Rocky Road versus Shady Glade. It's literally the perfect example. Like I remember picking Rocky Road and you picked Shady Glade, right? We then come back, we sat, we chatted, then you went, oh yes, and then I was like walking through the forest and I'm like, wait, what? I don't remember this bit. And we literally had to work it back to the fact that we made a different choice. Like stuff like that is fantastic. So if they could eliminate, in terms of the exploration, if they could eliminate some of the linear stuff that is currently going on in the DPA games, I think they'll be better for it.
No, I completely agree. When we first looked at the DPA games, one thing we was really uncertain about, mate, was the constant use of the face models, right? Now, like, over time, we've come to embrace it. We get that it's a bit like American Horror Story. It's the style they're going for. It's almost like you know, when you sort of put faces you know in a real dream, you know, because like those are the only faces you know to connect the dots. We are at the point now where like we've got our library of faces. We see some more than others, but one thing I'd like to see in Directive 8020 is for our main 5, maybe just to have some of the fresher ones. Like, I'm not asking for new faces, but I'm asking for maybe the playable 5 to be ones that we've not really played as before. So I'm talking like the Asian girl, you know, in the group at the end of The Devil and Me, or like, you know, doing the tiles or whatever in or you know, the dummy model in Man of Medan. You know, the Asian guy who plays the judge in Little Hope, you know. Maybe Olsen and Vince, you know, we haven't had him as a playable character, I don't think. And even, you know, the guy who's Carver in Little Hope and Jeff in The Devil and Me. I just think it would be nice to kind of just have a bit of a varied, you know, 5 for Directive 8020 rather than play, no disrespect to them, but playing as another Clarice or, you know, another Daniel or, you know, Charlie kind of thing. Yeah, that Alex model, we've seen him to death, you know. It would just be nice to mix it up a little bit. I don't know if you share the same sentiment.
100%. I mean, in an ideal world, there'd be new face models slowly to be integrated in. But yeah, like, no, I completely get it, because it's just, you know, it's just more fresh, you know, on the eyes when you're playing the game to just see these different things. But I would like to think that maybe a new season this really is the opportunity now to freshen everything up, whether it's the storytelling, the formula that you've really laid in with the first 4 games, and obviously the face models that come in with that. So 100%, it would be nice to see. I mean, you know what, while we're talking about characters, mate, you made a point, didn't you, that you wanted a more compelling villain in these games. So what I'd ask you is there anything about the villains so far in the DPA games that have made you feel this way, or is it just for Directive 8020 alone you're like, no, they need to do something more bold and different because it's in space?
It's probably a combo of both. If we look at the past DPA games and we look at the villains we've had, right now, 2 of them are in our head. One is a really cool, weird vampire creature that came from space. That's unique. That's a cool concept. The 4th one, very good, just very grounded and simplistic. Nothing wrong with that, though. But Directive 8020, yeah, like, there's a heavy chance. A lot of people have this theory, right, that we're going to see the same aliens from House of Ashes. Now, in my opinion, that is cool. That it is a nice callback to the universe, and we're going to see these villains again. So, you know, it might be that we get vampires in space. I don't know. I'd hate that personally if, like, you know, we got more of the same. I'd want to see something a bit different. You know, like we've mentioned before with the Alien series, a few people have said they want it to be almost like a xenomorph creature, like its own unique villain on the spaceship. We have to assume we're going to get some form of alien or monster, and I just, you know, think it would be cool if it had its own sort of maybe unique thing that we really didn't see coming. The way when we played House of Ashes and we were like, whoa, we've got vampires here. I didn't expect that. Like, it would just be really neat if we just go into it and it's maybe like your idea for the thing, mate. Maybe we get shapeshifters on the spaceship. I just want to be taken by surprise, and I feel like I'm not going to get that if it's the House of Ashes aliens, mate. I don't know if you're the same.
Yeah, I'd be bitterly disappointed if it was the same villains from House of Ashes, to be honest with you. I know that there are ties to House of Ashes, of course, like the constellation where the things come from and stuff. But yeah, I want something different. As you said, I want shapeshifters. I've been banging this drum for so long now that people are probably getting tired of it. But yeah, like, give me something different. It opens up doors to, you know, really mix up the dialogue, because you don't know who you're talking to. You know, you could be potentially talking to the shapeshifter. Opens up to replayability as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would even take, like, you know, like a Doctor Who style villain. Maybe you get something like a Weeping Angel where, you know, we have to keep our eyes open, and like we get some kind of unique mini game whenever we encounter one of these aliens or villains. Just something a bit unique that we don't see coming is all I ask for. So yeah, like, I just think we're having a game that is set out of space, and I feel like to marry that theme, I feel like we need a villain that's outside the box as well.
You know what? It's weird you saying that, like the blink thing. It's apparently, you know, the switchback, the VR game. It's apparently meant to be one of the features of the game where, like, if you blink, like, that's what can effectively fuck up your playthrough. I need to look into it or something. But I was looking at some like comments. Was it on Discord or like on YouTube or Twitter or whatever? People saying that this is like a feature of the new switchbacks. No, it's funny that you mentioned that because I know we will talk about QTEs in this video, and like I do think that there could be some work done there. But like certainly something to give it, you know, a bit more fresh. And I mean, like, you know, going back to the villains as well, I want the villain to be, it's tough to describe, but you know how like we've got Wendigos in Until Dawn. Very agile, they move quick, right? And they're strong and they rip your head off, right? Then got werewolves in the Quarry, very strong, very agile, very quick, and they can rip your head off and gut you, right? And then even like you know, in House of Ashes, the vampires, again, very strong, very agile, very quick. You know, they can gut you, they can bite your neck. Aesthetically, they all look superb and they all look very different. I want the villain to be different from that mould. So, you know, that's why I think the shape-shifting thing could work. But like, beyond that, I'm like somewhat out of ideas. But do you get what I mean? To break that mould a bit, so that you know that they're exploring different ways that a villain can be menacing in a video game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, mate. No, that's a very good point. Obviously, let us know in the comments, like, you know, further on what you'd like to see and your idea for a villain to be in outer space for Directive 8020, guys. Obviously, you briefly mentioned, and we said that we'll make a specific video on this, so we're not going to linger too much. But, you know, we've been on about this for a while, mate. We're going to sound like a broken record, Blair, but we want to see improved QTEs, right?
100%. Yeah.
I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is that I know I shouldn't compare video games, but I'm gonna do it. I always talk about how Quantic Dream are the best games company when it comes to QTEs. When you play Detroit Become Human and Yukara running out the door with Alice away from Todd, the buttons, they're flashing on the screen, it's tense, it's difficult, you've got to like unlock the key, but then you fail that, and then you take a punch, and then, you know, your character loses a bit of blood. You're there on the edge of your seat, and, you know, you're rocking back and forth. You think you've got your character killed off like 4 times in a one bit of combat. If you fail a button, you honestly think you might have died, and then it makes you, when you do survive and you get out, you feel like $1,000,000. You feel like you really earned that win. When I play the Supermassive Games and it's swipe left to disarm Jedediah, I shrug my shoulders and I think, yeah, top stuff. I've done it. I don't feel that rewarded or accomplished. I mean, you know, not to say that all Supermassive Games are easy. I thought Until Dawn nailed it beautifully. And this is coming from a guy who blamed his controller when he killed 3 characters off in The Devil in Me here. So I am, you know, very aware that, you know, they can make it more challenging. But I guess what I'm asking for, and I don't know if you'd agree with this, is less reliance on slow-mo and a better sort of display. Like, get rid of that lime green from The Devil in Me, sort of The Quarry, is it?
Yeah.
And maybe just add something a little bit more in depth than swipe the analog left or right and, you know, hit a few buttons. I want to see some different things like Detroit Become Human give us.
Yes, I think the main point for me is just to give me more diverse QTEs. I don't want to be tapping the button. I don't mind that, but throw some other things in there. Like I say, what the clever thing with the Detroit Become Human one, going back to that one with Kara at the door, the action that you're performing is the action that she would be doing in order to get out. So, like, you know, in a weird way, you are like her in a way. Whereas if you're just, you know, tapping a button, you know, and you see, you know, Mark trying to like pull a wall back from collapsing on Charlie's hand, it's not as immersive. So I think, you know, in that way it's clever. this is, this is what we were saying about Until Dawn. I know it's difficult to do now because it was on PlayStation. Nowadays, you've got Xbox and PC to factor in. But I really liked the don't move in Until Dawn because, again, if you're talking about relating to the characters, you physically didn't have to move. And I know there's ways around it. You can just drop the controller and, whatnot. But, for the most players, that they'd sort of hold on to the controller and they'd have to be dead still. So you was like the character that you was on the screen. It wasn't just about tapping buttons, spamming buttons, moving a certain analog to one direction and, and that's it. It was just a far more immersive experience. So I'd want them to go back in that direction. And also as well, I know this might sound a bit cheeky because they do offer like different difficulties now for like these games. But it feels too easy still, in my opinion. Maybe it's because of the QTEs themselves, and maybe it's because they have gone to like this user-friendly model. But even with like the heartbeat sequences, I'm doing it on challenging difficulty. I'm not failing them. Like in the Devil in Me, I wasn't. The reason I did in House of Ashes was because of the brightness issues. So maybe that's on me. Maybe I need to up it to like lethal difficulty or something. But then, do you know what I mean? Like it could be too difficult. So like, I just feel like they got the sweet spot right with Until Dawn because you had these cinematic cuts and cinematic angles and things. Your eye was really busy anyway. And then you had a QTE come up, so you're like, oh my god, I'm going to have to look out for them as well. So that's how I'd want them to evolve the QTEs, to sort of, keep in mind the difficulty and also keep in mind, like, how diverse the QTEs are themselves.
Yeah, no, I completely agree because like the QTs themselves are super easy. I couldn't do the heartbeat sequences to save my life. I think I literally got one right the whole game. I can't do those, but in terms of just the swiping the analogs, just way too easy. I completely agree with that one, mate.
They could bring certain QTEs in for Directive 8020 that relate to space somehow. It could be how like when we played Last Stop and you've got a like, or even Heavy Rain might be a better example, where you're like pressing one button and then you've got to hold that button and press another button and you've got to hold them too and press another button. It could be something they do like that in space where you're playing as one character and you're holding on to another character that's at the edge of this rope, and if you fuck up the QTE, you somehow let go of the rope and that character dies, they drift off in space. Like that's just me thinking off the top of my head, but you get what I mean?
Yeah,
you can mix
I get you
so many ways.
I reckon like I had this cool idea where let's say we're playing multiplayer and let's say you've got to go out and fix the spaceship, but it's a little too fast, so like I'm holding the rope and you're and I'm in the spaceship and then you go outside and you have to fix it. Now you've got to like basically do all these things, but while you're doing it I have to hold A, because if I let go of that A, I let go of the rope and I've killed you. I've just let you go in space. So like yeah, like maybe you could have cool like multiplayer specific puzzles as well. Not puzzles, like quick time events or button sequences. I think that would be a really neat feature. And obviously this is just us spitballing. We're here to dream while the Supermassive Games, the poor guys are just in the studio like, come on, we're doing so much already. You're asking too much from us. But it's just neat spitball ideas, right, that we think would be really cool to see.
Yeah, they're sat there saying like, oh, like you're expecting all of this like extra stuff, and you don't want us to up the price on our games, like cheeky.
Yeah, yeah.
But no,
it took us cool. 6 months to edit, swipe left on the analog, and now you want us to do this?
Yeah, like and you know what, like, because obviously you just mentioned about multiplayer, so I think that the natural step, mate, is probably to go on to cross-platform, right? That is of course something that we'd like to see. Directive 8020. Here's a question I'll pose to you, mate. If Supermassive said, yeah, cross-platform is a go, would you still want to do your solo playthrough as always, or would you be willing to like experiment and be like, you know what, Jack, let's go, let's do a shared story for our blind playthrough?
Yeah, I feel like for a DPA game, I'd be willing to experiment, and I would make my blind playthrough multiplayer. I did that with Little Hope. I used to live with someone, and we played Little Hope multiplayer for the first time. Every other game I've played solo, but yeah, for sure, like stick it on the channel, see how we work as a team. I think that would be really good, mate. Yeah, I'd be all for that.
It's funny because like we could, obviously, like the thing is that you could record it, right? I could just imagine like some of your gameplays, like, oh, what the fuck did Jack do there? Like, he just got me killed. We go to do the analysis, and it's just like, oh, like what the fuck happened there? Like, you know, I think it would be cool. Like, I think on the most part, like, you know, it would be great to experiment for like one game. I think on the whole, I'd probably like do it solo, just because then I feel like I'm, you know, I can like blame myself or whatever. And I think besides, you'd probably want a record than I have, that's for sure, for keeping characters alive. But like, yeah, like that, you know, that would be a fantastic thing, you know, for us, you know, just speaking selfishly for a second, because, you know, it would mix things up. I've done shared story before, but I did do it when I'd already played the game. So like the other people that were playing, it was their first time. I sort of was sat there playing, knowing all the choices, knowing everything, you know, doing this. So imagine like a blind playthrough, it would be pretty special.
Just like you say, just complete selfish reasons, and it doesn't even apply to just any sort of interactive, you know, drama game. It can apply to any game. I'm sure there's, you know, you've got mates on different consoles and you want to play a specific game with them, but you can't because you're on PlayStation, they're on Xbox, someone's on Twitch, someone's on PC. We know how it goes. And yeah, it would just be really neat if, like, you know, you could break down that barrier and actually play, you know, like these games with your mates. And, you know, why not? Cross-platform's a thing. They could probably implement it. I don't know how easy that is to do, but, you know, I'd love to see that. It would be epic if we could play these games, like, you know, together, mate. I mean, a topic I'll talk about now, mate, is, so, obviously The Devil in Me introduced a new thing for us, right, in this inventory system, Jack. I mean, like, it was a nice welcome feature. Still needs a bit of work, right? How could they improve it in Directive 8020, mate?
I think that they could expand it out a little bit. I remember like when, you know, that before the game came out, and, you know, when they were talking in the interviews, and it was said, oh, there's this character inventory where, you know, characters can give other characters, you know, things that they have on them, and that can change the story in different ways. Of course, they were referring to the screwdriver thing, right? Now, I can't think of any other examples whereby, you know, characters give an item to one another. So, you know, in Directive 8020, maybe you could expand that out to a point where, you know, you give the player a bit more agency. Like, imagine, you know, when you get split up, right, and you're walking as a two. Imagine as you're walking, rather than doing it at a set point with a set choice, imagine you could just go up to the character at any point, tap A, and it comes up and it says, you know, give the torch to them or give the thingy to them. You can give it to them at any point, and then that can almost like guide your story again. Like this, you know, dream stuff, because you fucking branches on this would be absolutely insane. But do you get what I mean? So that it's not as fixed in like one moment that you have to give an item over.
No, I completely get you. It's a system that you can do in Resident Evil on multiplayer. So I used to like binge Resident Evil 5, and you all have 9 items each, or 9 slots each, and it might be that one of you has 8. So you pick up a herb, but your mate's got more space, so you can give them items, and you can do that at any point. And yeah, that would be awesome. It would definitely be a surefire way to expand it. I mean, what you were saying about the screwdriver, it's very true, because, I mean, we look back at Until Dawn, that's something we already had, right, with the flare gun. Like, you have a moment there and then where you give someone an item or you keep it, and it affects the choice later on in the game. Don't get me wrong, I love that, but yeah, like, you almost are a bit misled that, like, you can like change items. And especially if I look at my Devil in Me blind playthrough, I killed Kate off, so I still to this day don't really know what the crystals do, even though I am aware they can do something. I know Mark can lose items and stuff, and that can affect his, survival. But yeah, like definitely that would be cool if like maybe you pick up a weapon or an item, or a clue. And yeah, maybe you can distribute that to someone in the group, and then, someone's going to need that, but you don't necessarily know who. I think that would be a really surefire way to improve these DPA games, mate.
Especially, like you get it in a lot of games. You get it in like LA Noire as well, where you pick up an object and it literally means jack shit. It's not a clue, it's not anything, it's just an example, it's just an excuse to, pick up an item and look at it. The fact that you could perhaps take that item, like you say, and then it could come into use later on. It's why I'm sort of low-key just sort of going on a quick tangent, why I'm like interested in the Expanse, because they seem to have taken the inventory idea and expanded it to a point where, yeah, like you say, like when you're on this ship and you're scavenging bits and pieces, it can actually be very rewarding to explore and pick these things up, because different items will get different responses from members of the crew. It might be good, it might be bad. Do you know what I mean? That can only help the story and like the relationships between characters. So I feel like what they did in The Devil in Me was really the foundation. I think that they can build this whole like inventory system up a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree, mate. Don't know how to shoehorn this one in, but you've put less hand holding. So you mean this in terms of exploration, right?
Yes, I do. So like it comes back to that thing where I should have probably mentioned it before actually, when we was talking about the features like walking, running, or maybe not running, like the jumping, the vaulting, the shimmying. You know how it is at the minute in like say like in The Devil in Me, where like you walk up to an area where you can shimmy and you then have to hit A and then you start to shimmy along. Again, it almost comes back to that point I said about giving the player a bit more agency. And because then it's sort of like it says that, that through your exploration, you found this thing without having to, get the whole hit A thing. And then, I don't know, like it just a little bit less hand holding. I don't know if I've made that point clear enough. But so it's a little bit less point and clicky. So like when you're exploring, you can walk off to a random corner and you're like, oh wow, like there's something I can crawl under there, and it's like in this shadow, and then it leads off to somewhere completely different where you can find a clue, find this, find that, and then you can come back to the linear path and go from there, so that you've not got this constant hit A thing coming up to basically tell you that you can go through here.
Yeah, it's true, because like these games rely a lot on that little white glimmer to say, oh, there's a clue here, by the way. And I quite like that, because I'm a clue hunter. It's nice that my hand is held a little bit, but like it would be cool if I found that on my own merit, and it would make the game a little bit more challenging. And if I imagine, say, like if there's other DPA games that are set somewhere like in a forest or a jungle, maybe in an area with debris, like with destruction, I mean, it would make it a little less obvious that maybe there's a balance beam somewhere, and you actually just walk up to like a random wall and you're like, oh, I could actually shimmy across this. And it'd be nice, and then it creates that whole conversation that we mentioned as well, where I can actually come up to you and be like, oh, did you know that you could do this, mate? And then if you say no, then bullseye, because it's like maybe you've discovered something that your friends haven't, and then you've unlocked some clues, and it just does that thing again where it makes you feel a bit rewarded that you've discovered something.
You know what? Something that we've not got on the list here, but it's just reminded me. At the end of the game, or at the end of a chapter or whatever, you get statistics come up.
Yeah.
Like, so do you know what I mean? Like, you can then, almost like how in Detroit Become Human, you see the pathway, right? Whereas with this, or like similarly to Life is Strange, you get a menu that comes up and it tells you like what was possible in that particular scene or that particular chapter. You can sit there afterwards and, like you just say, you can either cross the bridge, or you can shimmy past the wall, or you can, I don't know, go through some shrubbery and find a hidden cave. I sat there thinking, what, there was a cave there and I missed it? And because you didn't have the little A button to tell you that something was there, it felt more rewarding. And then you're like, oh my god, I've got to go and play it to see what was there. So like it builds, it helps, the replayability as well.
No, mate, no, completely agree. One thing I want to move on to, mate, is glitches. Now, I feel like we have to talk about them because there's something that forever plagued the DPA games and Supermassive Games. Don't get me wrong, Devil and Me, we loved it, but you give more features, you give more room for error, and that certainly happened with Mr. Nestor glitching with his clothes, walking out the map, doing the mark shuffle. And like every game seems to have an item that we can't quite pick up, or an item that we get stuck and we have to go back into the menu, or we have, Jason releasing his racist tendencies by, imprisoning you because you're from a different country. We've got all these glitch problems, right? And I think it just goes without saying, mate. I know a lot of people in the comments when we mentioned, we did our video, didn't we? Did glitches ruin the Devil in Me? And so a lot of people said, no, I found them funny. And, there is definitely that side of me. I love a good glitch. I do love a good glitch. But, like I say, for some people, the glitch is too much where it completely ruins their gameplay. Like, I always bring my brother's Devil in Me gameplay up where he literally had characters killed because his QTEs didn't come up. And it's like, how can you save a character if you're not being told how to do it? So yeah, I just think this one goes without question, mate. We like to see less glitches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And do you remember any glitches in Until Dawn?
No, I never had any on my blind playthrough. Until Dawn was a pretty spotless game. I am aware they exist because I have seen some on YouTube, specifically around Matt and Emily climbing around, like the bit with the lift, where like I'm pretty sure like Emily's hands were all over the shop or something, or like they were floating. I can't quite remember, but yeah, no, Until Dawn, pretty flawless game for glitches.
I was gonna say, because I've played it I've played it once, and then I've seen like 2 or 3 other playthroughs, and yeah, I've never seen any glitches at all. So it's just bizarre. So like, yeah, I feel like, and I think this is mostly coming off the back of The Devil in Me, right? I mean, there was a few glitches in the quarry, but they weren't game breaking, at least from what I've seen anyway. Yeah, like obviously it would help, and I think especially because the people that have their blind playthrough ruined by glitches, you can't get that back, can you? You can't hypnotise yourself and forget what you've seen. So you then have to go into it again, and you know what's going to happen, you know what's coming, and it's just like it. Thankfully that's not happened to me yet, but I dread the day that it does.
Yeah, and kind of like on a slightly more like similar topic, and it's not one we've got on our list, so I'm going slightly off piste here, mate. It's one thing that I know that like one of our big fans, Nightfall Protocol, one of our biggest fans who isn't afraid to voice his opinion, which we really love and respect. He's come up with some classy comments. One of the reasons he absolutely hates the DPA games, and he thinks it's because they're just so unpolished compared to the blockbusters. And I mean I can't argue with it too much. I wouldn't come down as harshly as this guy does, but one thing he doesn't like is the face animations, and it is true, like, when you're being asked a question and you have to pick your head or heart choice, we see the character's eyes dart around the screen a lot, and, a lot of people think it doesn't look quite realistic. So, we voiced it in the past, we'd like to see, smoother facial animations. I voiced it before as well, I can't judge too much, because as someone who, lacks social skills and doesn't make eye contact greatly, I do respect the characters for that. But, from a video game, it just would be nice if, I guess, we saw some smoother facial animations. I don't know if that's fair to say, Jack.
Perfectly, and they've proved that they can do it. I think The Quarry was absolutely sound in that regard.
Yeah.
Again, and that's what makes me think it could be a budget thing. I really don't know. Maybe it's because they had, publishers behind them. There was more money and more time. I really don't know, but it is a common thing with these DPA games where the camera will cut, especially if you sense that it was meant to be like a shared story moment where you as a character will say something, the camera will then cut to somebody else, and they'll just be very still for a second, as if, you know, like they're making a choice, and then they'll suddenly like move their head and move their eyeballs and stuff, and it's like it's a little bit jarring. So yeah, like little edits like that I think would go a long way to, you know, improve these games.
Of course, mate. Another element we'd like to see, you know, which was incorporated in The Devil in Me, and we absolutely loved it, but we thought, oh my god, it's the tip of the surface, or tip of the iceberg for something that could be a lot greater and more improved and maybe become a really integral part of these games. Me and you, Jack, we're big puzzle lovers, right? We love escape rooms. We do them often. And we were really happy, weren't we, to see the breaker puzzles, you know, come into the Devil in Me game. As it were, the breaker puzzles, I mean, they were meh. Like, nice welcome change. I loved having them, but like we did them 2 or 3 times and they were like okay. I would love for them to just bring more different puzzle, like a variety of them, ones that are like varying challenges. Maybe we get a memory game, maybe we get a bit of a mathsy game, maybe we get a bit of like a symbol match game. I don't know, throw them at me. But I don't know, varied puzzles, Jack. I don't really know how you could incorporate that in a space game, but this goes for Directive 8020 and future blockbusters and DPA games. But yeah, it goes without saying, and I know your answer is going to be yes, but I mean, anything to expand on now? Like, you'd love to see puzzles in these games, right?
I would. I mean, it sucks that I'm not creative enough to literally pitch ideas, so I'm glad that you just have. The only thing I could think of is, honestly, you know how like in The Devil in Me you had like the maze? Maybe something similar where you've literally all, you know, your objective is just to get to the door on the other side of the room, but you've got to, you know, figure out like what way to get there. Maybe there's some objects on the way, you know, just expand that idea a little further. But yeah, like honestly, puzzles are great because you're still in the game, you're still in the world. It is almost in a way a natural breather. But if you've had like an intense chase sequence, you know, maybe you've made several choices and you're like, God, like, you know, there's not a curator scene to calm down with. A puzzle is a great way to slow the pace of the game down, but you're still engaging your brain and you're still like progressing with the story. So I'm all for more puzzles, like 100%. If you fail them, there's jeopardy to it. It makes you want to replay it and, you know, get it right and stuff. So again, like, it will always add to, you know, the existing formula. So yeah.
Yeah, and also like I just imagine playing that in like a multiplayer mode where maybe it's like, I don't know, maybe 3 people tackle a puzzle at once, but then one of you who's playing like a certain character, maybe it's a mathsy puzzle and that person just so happens to have a maths degree, so maybe they can chip in and you can do team puzzles. Maybe you're forced to do individual puzzles. There's just a lot of different pathways you can take with incorporating more puzzles into these games. There's an absolute variety of puzzles out there, and I would just think like it would blend really well. Like you mentioned with the horror element as well. You've got a horror scene coming up, and like you know, I know these games are horror at core as well as the interactive drama, but I just think, you know, puzzles are a nice little layer that can, you know, really blend and harmony well with so many other kind of like features and layers to the game, and I just think they'd be so welcome. And I'd love more than just 3 of those breaker puzzles. I'd love a variety, and I'd love just more and more.
I think as well, right, if they expand out into different genres and they did do crime, let's just say like it was like a hidden agenda sort of game, puzzles would be brilliant in that. Because even here's another one, I'm just like fucking spitballing games here. Heavy Rain, when you're playing as Ethan, you've got like these different puzzles to solve in order to get to a location. Like, that was fantastic. If you can like, incorporate puzzles like that lend to the plot of the game and take it, you know, and just, again, it's sort of, you can fail them, you can get them right, some might be against the clock. You know what I mean? It adds to it makes the experience more sort of like well-rounded. It juxtaposes like a lot of the walking through corridors, picking things up sort of stuff. So they're like different types of gameplay going on.
A really key part to these DPA games, if I was to say, oh, Dark Pictures Anthology, I think your mind instantly darts to one thing, right? And that's the Curator. So for me, I just we mentioned how much we want the Curator to be incorporated in the games. Some of us were a little underwhelmed. His season 1 ending didn't give us too much. I've always been on the fence with the Curator. I want them to use him. I want more Curator scenes, but I almost don't want them to take his story arc and butcher it. So part of me is happy for him to almost stay as a narrator. It almost just depends on what they do with him. But yeah, like, obviously season 2, I just think I'd like a little bit more out of the Curator. I don't know what they would do. It really is down to their writing. But, I mean, Jack, in Directive 8020, like, is there something you want to see from the Curator?
Really, I mean, I'd like to see him more. I want to see him go back to the days when he was like in Man and Medan, where he was like giving you all these quotes and things, and he sort of had that more air of mystery. I feel like I've become a bit too familiar with the Curator, in all honesty. I need that sort of next step in the relationship with him, because maybe it's like it's getting almost a little bit more two-dimensional by each game. But by the way, I love the Curator, I love the world, I love the the character and everything about him. But like, the way it's sort of slowly panning out, it needs to take that next step, because it, like I say, it's very obvious for me how he he sits there, he introduces it, and then he gives you a clue. It's you don't, at first there was a bit of intrigue, a bit of mystery. Is he there to help you or hinder you? For me, it's pretty clear at this point that he's there to help you. So yeah, like, the difficulty, and we've talked about this before, is that you don't want him to get butchered. So it's towing that, it's walking that line where you want more of him, and maybe like more of him like being relevant to the plot, or like a backstory for all these games. But if it becomes too convoluted, it then loses something.
I think, like, if we take the last game and what we got, we had that gust of wind come down the hallway and tried to break into his room. So clearly there's something. Clearly he's like disturbing the balance somehow of the universe. I'm unsure what it necessarily means, but I think maybe we expand on that. Maybe in Directive 8020 we have it go one step further. Maybe have books fly off the shelf, or have his glass window get shattered. Then maybe, I don't know, like 2 games after that, have another bit of jeopardy that comes in. I don't know, just something again and again and again. And then maybe like make the season 2 finale. Maybe, I don't know, maybe he gets hurt somehow. Maybe he betrays us and it turns out he was hindering us. He goes 180 on us. Just something to kind of really kind of twist it. But yeah, like, clearly, like, I think at this point I would be underwhelmed if nothing happened after that gust of wind shot, because that has to mean something. I don't want them to just leave it at that. I feel like after giving us that hint, I feel like they've got a plan in the works. But it's what I'm trusting Supermassive Games on. I think like they have a plan with the Curator. I think there's a bigger picture, and to be honest, I am excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, no, I am as well. Like, I suppose it's something we have to bear in mind, like, speaking from their point of view, is they might not know how long they want this Dark Pictures thing to carry on for. Like, there could be a season 2, there could be a season 3, there could be a season 4. So, like, they might be purposely taking the Curator's story very slowly because, with the success of the games and things, they think, well, we can do another season. So then you need the Curator to be relevant still, and you can't give his whole story away so quickly, because otherwise, if you do, you then have to get a different narrator in or do something else completely different. So I do understand it. Then obviously, speaking from my point of view as a player, of course, I'd like to know more about him and how he fits in this world.
It's a completely valid point, because I think, like, obviously we've got the blockbusters that come out once every 5 or 7 years, whatever it is. But, like, these DPA games, it's like kind of once a year. It's a nice source of income, and I feel like you don't want to disrupt that, do you? You want to almost, like, keep the harmony, keep the rhythm. And if you have the narrator, the curator just as a narrator, you're not disrupting that, are you? And then you can keep releasing these DPA games, because after season 2, like you say, they might want to renew it. They might want to do a season 3 and 4. So yeah, no, I completely get that, mate. That is a really valid point. Now, I mean, kind of our final bullet point here really is that we kind of had a video the other month, really, didn't we, about all to do with the ultimatum ending in The Devil in Me, Jack.
Mm-hmm.
You're a really big fan of this ending, aren't you?
Oh yes, no, I am. Yeah, it was brilliant because A, it was like somewhat unexpected. B, it tied in with the cycle continues thing, and also it was a dark ending. I thought that was fantastic. So, I mean, it's appropriate that we'll probably be ending on the dark endings as a point. So yeah, of course, I'd like to see this in Directive 8020. So maybe we can just like spitball some ideas as to like what those endings could be. I don't know if you want to go first, mate.
Yeah, of course. So like, obviously, like maybe like we've got like, we say like ultimatum endings. We'd like to see more ultimatum endings. It would be interesting, and I'm just thinking from a multiplayer point of view, maybe it can vary where one of you are in a position of power where you can save yourself, but it might be at the expense of another character. So it might be that, like, I don't know, maybe the goal is to get back to planet Earth, and maybe one of you ends back up on the spaceship or your planet, and maybe you look like a hero, you land, but you did it at the expense of another character. And it might be that, this can vary for different ones, so it's not always Mark and Kate at the end. Maybe you can get different ones, and maybe they all get a unique cutscene for how they get home. And I don't know, there's just like, obviously I'm asking for quite a lot there, because you're gonna have to animate different endings and stuff. But yeah, like, I just think these endings are really cool, these little bonus endings, whether Rachel is in a cocoon or not, whether she gets, saved, whether she ends up just abandoned. I just like the idea of, like, you look at a game like Life is Strange, it's like a 50-50 like choice at the end. It would just be cool if, like, we were just rewarded with loads of different bonus endings. I mean, A, I don't know if you like my idea, and B, I don't know if you had any of your own, Jack.
No, I do. To be honest, from your idea, I've got a couple of ideas from it. So, like, I suppose you could almost look at it as like a dark ending. If we're going back to my whole shapeshifter thing, you could have an ending whereby shapeshifter wins. Maybe the shapeshifter makes it back to Earth. All the characters are dead, and the shapeshifter's taken one of their form, get back to Earth, up to black. You know that shit's gonna go down. It could be that you have like this very morally difficult choice at the end. It could be that you've kept all the characters alive at this point, right? Maybe there's a risk that one of you's infected, you don't know, and the choice is we either blow up the ship and save Earth, or we go down to Earth and, basically risk it. So like you've got that like moral dilemma. I'm trying to think, maybe because you're in space, maybe it could be a weird like, colonizing thing where there's a choice by, do you set up on this planet whereby you're invading this species' home, or do you turn around and go back to Earth? You know what I mean?
Here's a cool one. How about if you've got the infection on the ship, and you can either bring it home and risk your planet, or you can kind of just die but keep your planet safe. So you kind of die a hero and no one knows about it. So there could be like a greater good choice, like a really moral conundrum in there. And like I know you spoke about like how you like these dark endings, and when I made my own Supermassive game, heavily voiced how I want like a choice splitting game. I want like choices really to split the room down the middle. I love a good moral conundrum. Big philosophy fans. So yeah, I would love like an absolute brutal ending like that, where it really tears the room with a 50-50 choice, where you really have to think hard about what to do.
When you think about it, the whole objective of these games is to save everyone, right? Could you imagine if saving everyone was at the cost of, say, Planet Earth or something like that.
Oh, that would be cool. I would love that because, yeah, like,
There's no winning.
at the end of the day, I've conditioned myself with these DPA games, mate, where it's like, do you want to shoot your mate? I'm going to be like, no, because I want to get, like, the save all 5 people trophy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'd love for them to throw an absolute curveball at me where I have to, like, consider shooting my mate, you know, maybe, I don't know, something like that. But yeah, no, mate, really good idea there.
Who knows? I mean, here's another way that you could spin it. So, like, maybe I don't know the whole plot, but Planet Earth is infected, right? And you know, there's nukes under the Earth's crust. You've got the big red button. You're in the spaceship. Do you press it? Basically, you've got all of Earth down there. You would save your characters, but then again, you've got the whole, you know, yeah, but I have just like blown up our home planet. So do you know what I mean? There's not necessarily a good ending. Whereas like you just said, with these games, we've become accustomed to, like, you do a good thing, there's a good outcome. I can understand why they've done that, and sometimes they go against it, but more often than not, it is like a good decision leads to a good outcome. But it would be good to spin that formula around in perhaps this game or another game, it doesn't matter, and throw the player. And that's partly why I think the ultimatum thing was so impactful for me, because you couldn't really win, because obviously you got captured, you then lured other people to the island, which is a morally bad thing to do, but you did it to save your own skin. And then obviously you can then get shot, or you can save everyone and then just get killed, you know, gassed in the room, and then Kate will get, she have like acid put in her, didn't she? Something like that. She gets injected.
She does, yeah.
Yeah, so like, for me, that's just brilliant. Like, it's just a great way to end the game. And I know you said it before, and I know someone actually in the comments has like mentioned in one of our videos that they liked that ending so much that it could be like it was in a movie. That's exactly what they're going for, so I'm all for it. Love a darker ending.
No, that's absolutely it. I mean, obviously, I'm happy to wrap this video up here. But yeah, guys, I mean, you know, over the course of the past few videos we've done here, we've just spoke about ideas for us to, you know, make Directive 8020 a great game, things we'd like to see different from Supermassive Games in the future. I mean, obviously, like, you know, we hope you've enjoyed our little brainstorm about the ideas that we, you know, brought forward to the table, ones you'd like to see. Let us know in the comments, guys, maybe things we've missed, things you'd like to see in these games. Maybe take the points we've mentioned and expand on them. What are the points you maybe agreed or disagreed with, or things you'd like to see differently, or, you know, more in depth? Just absolutely spitball, guys. Let us know what you guys thought. Jack, anything to mention?
No, I don't think so, mate. I think, yeah, we can just wrap it up there.
Awesome stuff. If you guys are enjoying the Supermassive Games content, just check, you know, the playlists. We've got plenty more videos like this where we're building theories, where we analyze, you know, all the games. So yeah, honestly, guys, just check out our channel more. But yeah, if you enjoy content like this, be sure to support us. You know, we'll be making a lot more content like this. But if you made it all the way through these videos, we do really appreciate it, and we hope you enjoyed every moment of it. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining, guys. We will see you next time.
Have a good one, guys. See you soon.